Oh, hey.
There.
Hey, we made it. How is it going?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it, Brandon. It's great to have you here.
Anytime, anytime.
Yes. Well, for everybody that's tuning in with us, welcome to the Social Video Playbook. This is a space where for the next 15 minutes, we spend time giving you the best insights that we can from real leaders doing the real work behind what is happening across social video. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, the yay, the nays of things that are happening in the space of what they've tried and worked well, what hasn't, and just other things that they're learning along the way. So I'm Elizabeth. I'm head of growth at Viral Moment. I'm host of the Social Video Playbook here. And I am really excited to have Brandon Grant Walker here today from Simon & Schuster with us. Brandon, give us a spiel. Who are you? Tell us about yourself.
Who am I? Hey, everybody. As Elizabeth said, I'm Brandon Grant Walker. I'm the Vice President of Content Marketing and Brand Development at Simon & Schuster. And so I work on our corporate team and I lead our teams that oversee our website content, all of our corporate social channels, our video production, our consumer and trade events, our multicultural marketing, and our partnerships. So I've got
a lot of hats.
I've got a lot of I've got a lot of hats that I got to cycle through each day, but my role is equal parts strategy and creativity, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, I love striking the balance between the two is so good, especially when you can just flow in it.
Yeah, usually it's like you're either brand or your growth, and in my role it's a little bit of a hybrid where I get to sort of really focus on some of the growth projects for Simon & Schuster, but then also like really get into the brand and the creative and the look and the feel and what people are going to really engage with. So it's really fun.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, Brayden, I'm really excited to dive in the next 15 minutes and chat with you about some of your insights across social. So let's hop on in. Let's do it. Yeah. So starting off, just big picture, your industry, publishing space that you're in, what's the number one shift that you've noticed that's been happening that people really just aren't ready for or haven't been?
Oof, there are so many. And I think that is the shift, is that there is a lot of everything. And particularly, in the publishing industry, it's how do we really make an impact across all of these different platforms, right? You've got your LinkedIn, you've got your YouTube, you've got your Facebook, you've got your TikTok, you've got your Instagram, you've got Blue Sky, you've got Tumblr, you've got Pinterest, you've got all of these platforms and so many more, Substack, like Reddit, there's a new platform every hour. And so I think, finding the space to be brave and pick a lane, I think is really hard for brands and something that brands struggle with. And I think if you can really like zero in on like what your secret sauce is and where that sauce is going to thrive the most, leave everything else behind, focus on one thing and grow from there. And I think that's something that, I sort of challenge myself with all the time is like, we don't have to put every piece of content on every single platform. It's going to perform better in certain places and that's okay. You will reach those people on those other platforms in a different way. So I think the level at which there are so many platforms, I think is something that people really struggle with. And I know that we think about a lot. And I think on the more technical side, I know you asked for one, but I've got two.
Insights are great.
Yeah, I think brands and something that we're focusing on as well is owning your data. These platforms have no allegiance to you and your analytics. They are going to present you with what they feel what they want to present you with when it comes to looking at your insights and your analytics. And so the more you can use any of these amazing platforms out there to funnel your data off of these platforms and into your own view so you can look at your data holistically, I think that's super important. Owning your data is going to be key for success and understanding what's working in the future.
Yeah. And if you are across multiple platforms, tracking that data, it's really important in knowing what's actually working.
Yeah.
So how is social video specifically? There's all these platforms, right? You have your regular text platforms, which is Reddit, that are primarily text focused. And then you have your TikToks and the YouTubes of the world, but how is social video changing the way that you've seen like brands make decisions?
I feel like brands are really more so than ever thinking video first and having ideas that start in the video world, in a visual moving world, I think is where brands are really starting to thrive and see the most impact. It's one of the most important and impactful mediums that we have. To be able to see and to hear and to understand something through video is super important. And so that's something that we think about all the time is like, okay, how does this start in video? And then how do we bring it to other mediums in an authentic way? We're constantly thinking about how we can just leverage the power of video to really connect with people authentically. And I think video really allows you to do that. So the more that brands can think video first, I think the more agile they can be as they're navigating these different platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. And with social video poses its own series of issues. So what have you seen are some of like the biggest challenges with social video so far?
Oh man.
The list is just that long.
There's so many. No, I mean, I think these are fun challenges. I think scale and speed, right? Like we had I had a meeting with one of my social managers last Friday, and we thought of an idea and we like brought it to the stakeholders like the next Monday because we knew that we needed to get this idea moving. Because when you have a spark of creativity, you don't want it to simmer, you really want it to boil and bubble up and cook more. And so I think like being able to move really quickly is super important. But with that, you need the scale too, right? Like you need the team to be able to help you build that vision or capture what it is you're looking to capture. So I think like the biggest challenge that we face all the time is just like, okay, we have all these great ideas. We want to move on them quickly, but how do we do it and not burn ourselves out? Every team is small, right? I feel like nobody's team is as big as they want it to be. There are always areas where you can have more people contributing and more people helping you execute or analyze. But I think scale and speed are two of the biggest roadblocks in social content.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Absolutely. And you kind of mentioned this. Don't give away any secret sauce, but how are you facing these challenges? Is there stuff that's been working? There's stuff that hasn't been working?
I mean, we're very lucky in that we have like a full video team here at Simon & Schuster called Studio 4, and they work across with all of our imprints on creating content with them. We also have a dedicated team for our corporate accounts. And so, they work on the sort of day-to-day content creation. And I think what's exciting is that we all collaborate really well together. And so I think having a team that is locked in is super important. And I know not a lot of brands or not a lot of creatives have access to that, but how we sort of battle that speed and then sort of scale is really coming together and saying, okay, what ideas are super tangible right now? What can we test and put out there and see if it's working, see what part of it is working, and then how do we iterate that? So I think, to answer your question more directly, I think being nimble is really, really important when it comes to creating social video. We all have these ideas that we feel super passionately about, but when you create it and you put it out there and you see that people aren't really engaging with the first part of it, but they really love something from the end part of it. How do you bring the end part closer to the front? You know what I mean? Like, how do you tweak that idea? How do you pivot? How do you give people more of what they want and more to engage with? Is something that we try to practice every day. We try not to get too married to any one idea. We want the concept to be there, but we want to be fluid enough that when people react to it, we can pivot and make other pieces of content similar to it.
Yeah. You're lucky you have an in-house studio. I think that's really cool. I didn't know that about Simon & Schuster. That's exciting.
It's like, I feel bad saying it because I've been at other brands where you don't have that. And I think people struggle with, okay, we want this to be perfect. We want it to be super polished. You know, we want to make sure we say every single piece of that CTA and we get every little bit of that message in there. And I think, you know, the heart is in the right place when it's thinking that, but you've also got to think like a consumer too, and you want it to feel authentic and you want it to feel real. And sometimes the most engaged videos are not the most polished ones, and that's exciting. So
yeah. So you already have the in-house people, but if you did have unlimited resources, like nobody's really totally untapped, right? If you had unlimited resources in this dream world, like what would Brandon want? What would make your life like so much better?
Hire more people.
People power, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I mentioned it earlier, but one of the things I love about the team here is that we collaborate really well together. And so I think having more people, more diverse thoughts and opinions and experiences and likes and interests at the table really help you ideate new and different things, you know? If somebody can say, oh, I saw this really interesting thing on Instagram or on Tumblr or whatever, and I thought it'd be kind of cool, and then I'm bringing something from a totally different intersection to this idea, it makes it that much more interesting and, you know, unique. So I think, like, you know, more video producers, more editors, more creative strategists, more. I would hire more people. And hire
more people. Yeah, put more cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong, like, kitchens can be like well-oiled machines. I feel like people sometimes say there are too many cooks in the kitchen, but sometimes they're not enough cooks in the kitchen tasting what's being put out there, you know? So I think, you know, as long as the environment is collaborative and people are working really well together, I think the more the merrier.
Yeah, I love that. So shifting gears a little away from some of the things that, you know, we've struggled with or trying to overcome, but when you're measuring success, what is a common mistake that you've seen brands make when they're using or when they're interpreting social video?
I think a common mistake I would say is probably like not looking at your metrics like often enough and not really drilling into the the um the specifics of your metrics, you know, like just taking video views at face value, right? Like, oh, this video got 10,000 views. Amazing, success, cool, great. But what I want to know is like, well, what's the completion rate? How what's the average number of minutes watched? You know, like if I see that like people are watching a 10 or a 3-minute video, they're only watching the first minute of the video, then that's telling me, okay, we need to put the most important information in the front, or we need to like really like hook them with something really interesting that makes them want to continue to watch at that 50-second mark. You know, we really, you need to think differently about how you're building that content. So I think really investigating the insights that you're getting is important, and that's why I was saying earlier, you know, owning as much of your own data as possible, I think helps with that too.
Yeah. And would you say that the most important things brands should actually be measuring is that average watch time, or are there other metrics that are more important for brands to be focusing on?
I mean, I think it really depends. You know, we focus a lot on video view length and views over time. Because, you know, I think people will say if it doesn't get 100,000 views in the first 24 hours, it's a failure. No. If you're seeing it grow over time, it means that it's being shared. It means that people are coming back to watch it. It means that it's finding new audiences. And so I think looking at not only like, 24 to 48 hour window, but also what is that 7-day window? What is that 30-day window? What is that, 60-day window in some cases? Because, you also have to realize that when you're creating content for platforms like TikTok, a lot of the times people are not seeing people who follow you are not seeing your video. because for the most part, they're in their FYP. They're not in their following. You know what I mean? So you really just have to like investigate that a little bit more. But I think video length, video views over time, and engagements are extremely important. And when I think about engagements, you know, it's not just a like. I want to know how many people are commenting. Is this being shared? Is this being saved? You know, those are like the three things I'm thinking about. Like, I want somebody to stop and say, oh my God, this is really funny. I have to comment with 3 emojis that no one's going to understand but me. Or, oh my God, this is really great. I need to share it with my best friend and my mother and the other 2 random, you know, group chats I have on Instagram. Or I need to save this because I want to come back to it because it was really interesting, or it presented me with information that I want for the future, you know. So those are the engagements that we really try to zero in on. And that's how we're thinking about content that we create. Is this going to be something somebody wants to share or save or comment on?
Yeah. And those are really important. You know, you can like something in your sleep, but actively engaging is very different.
Likes only go so far. And, you know, those other engagements are what these platforms are prioritizing too. You know, they want to be continuing to amplify content that's being shared and commented on and saved. So it's important.
Yeah. And leaning into that, and it's maybe a little bit repetitive too, but what's like an underrated insight that leaders in your field should act on now?
You know, my social media manager and I were looking at TikTok the other day, and we realized, or we were looking at like how many of our followers were engaging with our content versus non-followers, and the non-followers were more. And so I think, you know, for these platforms like TikTok and Instagram, where discovery is really important and you don't have to follow people to discover their content, I think looking at those insights will really help you understand, like, am I creating this content for a specific follower, or am I creating it for somebody new who I think I want to bring to the table, or I want to act in a certain way, you know?
Yeah, that's a great underrated insight. Where are you showing up, and then who's actually going to take in that content that you're putting out there? Is there a common assumption just in general about social video that you think is completely wrong?
Is there a common assumption? I don't know. I've been working in it for so long that I feel like I assume nothing when it comes to social. I think going back to my earlier point, I think a big assumption is that you have to be on every single platform. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think you start one, you perfect it, you play around. I think it's good for you to like reserve your handles across all the platforms, and to like, you know, have your profiles like set up to say, you know, we're not active here, find us here, or, you know, whatever. You know, I think it's important to sort of stake your claim on those platforms, but whether you need to be active on every single platform, I think it's a different story.
Yeah, no, it's valid. So we talked about, you know, the sky's the limit forever, and Brandon, you would get a whole slew of people in with you. But if you were to just get one thing in this year in 2025, and that thing could be a person, it could be another studio, it could be a thing, but if you could get one thing that would make all of the difference for your business this year, what would it be?
One thing that would make all of the difference this year that's a really good question. I don't know if there's just one.
There never is.
There's just one, but I think what can sometimes be hard is, you know, you are a leader of a brand or a team of social media people, and, you know, everybody's in their zone and doing their thing. And I think what I would love to have more access to is like conversation and community with other brands, to understand like how other brands are approaching, what other problems other brands are seeing. So similar to what you all are doing here with the Social Video Playbook. You know, I think community is really important when it comes to social media, and we often miss that part of it as a brand because we're too busy trying to build our own community, whereas we're not thinking about the community that we inhabit.
Yeah, that's true. And you can get a lot of good insights from those around you.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we have 1 minute left, or well, we're a little over, but we'll be fine. What is one lesson that you could give you could give away that you have learned in your years of navigating social video?
One lesson, just one.
Or many. I mean, share
I would,
your secrets.
I mean, I would say I I feel like I have done well with allowing myself and the people that I lead to be okay with failing and be okay with not getting it exactly right, but understanding that there is a learning there and that there's something we can take to the next project that we do. I think that's super important. I think sometimes we can all focus on being perfect. And I think it's important to allow yourself a little bit of grace and the ability to not get it right all the time.
Yeah, I love that. And we're working marketing, everything's a test.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
understanding that some tests fail, which is actually, it's so hard. If you're like, I know this, and then the one does fail, you're like, ooh, like that was sad.
It's tough, but like, why did it fail? I think,
Mhm.
you know, it's like, it's all about the why, you know, why did this fail? Okay, this failed because XYZ. Well, now I know for the future, maybe we shouldn't lean too much into this one thing or that one thing. You know, there's always something to learn.
Yeah, there is. Well, Brandon, I have learned a lot from you in this call. Thank you so much for your time. For everybody watching, if you want to get in touch with Brandon, follow his stuff. This is his URL scrolling across the screen. Thank you so much for participating today. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to chat again soon.
It was really, really great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too. Take care.